Okay, any questions in regard to last week's classes? Discussions? No? Okay. We have a double subject again today, is the last time. After that, always single subject. I'll try to keep it compact, but it's really important that you know this. So that extra subject is it's called Dharana, Ashna, and AUM, and it comes to the essence of what yoga is about. Ajna Chakra is the chakra in the head. So we discussed the chakras a little bit at the workshop. And yoga anatomy is not about the limbs and the organs and the what have you, physical parts, but yoga anatomy is about chakras. So there are 7 different energy bodies in a human being. In short, later we will come back to this in detail, very detailed, but in short, below the diaphragm are our lower emotions and desires. Lower emotions and desires. Our instincts are located here. Instincts that are responsible for survival. So there is fear. There is desire, including sexual desire. And then there is ego and ambition. So these 3 lower chakras is where people generally gravitate. Because energy has a tendency to condense and concentrate towards the bottom. It is because of this. Because when people are unstable, animals, by the way, function in the same way. When we are unstable, our energy is mainly below the diaphragm for a very practical purpose to help us survive. And if you look at how humanity has evolved throughout these centuries, humankind is very good at survival. Probably the best among all species. Above the diaphragm, we have the higher emotions and desires. In the heart, there is empathy, compassion, unconditional love, care. And here you have expression of creativity. All forms of expression. Creativity are located in the throat. Our education system, that is not so old if you look at it in the light of history, is only a couple of 100 years old, and only really as systematic and compulsory in the past 100 years, is kind of designed based on the same principle as yoga thousands of years ago recognized is important for human beings to cultivate, to stabilize, and to gain control over those lower emotions and desires, which are responsible for all misery, all the violence, and all the yamas that are being violated are generally finding the cause of those violations are below the diaphragm. Now, there used to be an approach that still exists in some yoga circles to focus on that development from the bottom up. So instead of starting with Ajna Chakra, which is what we do, there are forms of yoga when they start at the bottom. Now you can imagine, if you meditate, concentrate, meditate, focus on the lower chakras, you are increasing those emotions and desires rather than stabilizing them. So, like you could have read in the handout, at some point, a famous yogi, Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, not only famous but also controversial, because he was a real rebel, he proclaimed that we should abandon that ancient approach of starting our development in Muladhara Chakra, because all control, in fact, starts in Ajna Chakra. Ajna Chakra is the intellect, the mental body, intellect, and that is the aim of our modern education system. The problem is, if you compare it with the ancient yoga system, yoga aimed to develop Ajna Chakra without burdening. You develop Ajna Chakra by directing energy there through willpower, concentration, meditation. Then intellect will naturally awaken and develop, and then find the direction in which you want to go. Naturally and spontaneously based on your characteristics. The modern education system is very uniform and leads to many students having to learn things they're really not interested in. But you need to learn those things in order to pass the test and have a good end of the semester scorecard, so you can go to the next grade or to the next level of education, from middle to high to university, college, university. So modern education has the same purpose and it is very effective, but it has kind of overshot the goal with this huge mental burdening caused by the memorization of things we are not interested in. Now pay attention, this is important because everything is energy. When you need to study something you're not interested in, your energy collapses. Again, Mom, my belly hurts, I want to stay home today, I'm sick. No, you're not sick, you're just not interested in that teacher and that subject. Your energy goes down. However, when you have a subject that you're really interested in, bang! Total transformation. You're enthusiastic. Your interest is awakened. What happens? Energy goes up. And that is what yoga is about. So the modern system of education kind of overlooks or has become disconnected with that concept. What we try to do for the sake of our future growth and development properly, while trying to get rid of the pollution, the indoctrination, and come to our real selves, a true heart's content, is to more and more get rid of what brings us down and to more and more focus on what brings us up. So, keep a long story short, we start with Ashna Chakra. And you've basically already done that last week. You practice Asana for the physical body. What are you actually doing in Asana? Physical control. But because you control physically, you are stabilizing Shiva and Shakti energy, which the harmony of which leads to a natural phenomenon, that is energy rising up away from the natural condensation of energy. That is part one. 2, important element of asana done right is that you are standing still while actually actively engaging. You're not relaxing in a pose, you're actively engaging without movement, which leads again to that harmony and is not possible without mental concentration. when we go to the gym and we move, you can move without mental concentration, which is what most of us do in the gym. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just another way of fitness. So we watch TV while on a treadmill or on a cycle or listen to music, etc. So that's nice, but has nothing to do with what we try to achieve in yoga. Ajna Chakra is a mental body that is responsible for, we call it the sixth eye for a reason. We have five senses. Third eye, sixth sense. We have five senses that are gross, but the sixth sense is subtle. It's based on sensing, using your antennas to catch vibrations, which we usually do subconsciously. Ajna Chakra is like a secretary in a company sitting behind a desk with 6 phones in front of them. The boss is the crown chakra. Intuition, wisdom, vision, deep insight into complex matter, solving problems, etc. all happens in the crown chakra. But the crown chakra is nothing without rational thought. The secretary picks up the phone from above and says, okay, I understand what is going on here. It is in Ajna Chakra that you rationally understand what the crown chakra is trying to tell you. And in the same way, there are 5 telephone lines from below. When you experience fear and you don't rationalize it, you will simply act like an animal in an instinctive way. And fear usually leads to violence, because that's the way that we survive a dangerous situation. If you are able to pick up the phone in Ajna Chakra to Muladhara Chakra and say, hey, I sense some fear down there, what's going on? Then you investigate. And you try to understand why there is this fear. You try to rationalize it. What happened that led to this situation where I'm in fear? And more importantly, what can I do to solve this problem, this danger, without ending up in fighting, the need to fight to survive, but in a sensible way, without causing waves, avoiding violence. So Ajna Chakra is the center of everything. But it's not the most important. The most important is the boss. Ajna Chakra is willpower. You can say that is the commander-in-chief. But it is listening to the information from the top, but also, so the superior, but also to the information from the bottom, from the subordinates. If Ajna Chakra through proper practice is developed, you will quickly notice more and more control in your life over emotions. One of the biggest problems that we are facing in daily life is that we're being thrown back and forward, depending on the situations that we find ourselves in, thrown back and forward because of emotions that we are dealing with in a subconscious way. So it's always leading to instability, to conflict, to feeling unhappy, depressed, and what have you, without understanding why. Okay? I made these arrows here, center, and the center is nada. Have you heard nada? Nada? Have you heard nada? While lying in bed before you fall asleep, while riding the subway, Have you heard nada? Last week already you heard it, right? Have you heard nada? Nada is like a ringing in your ears. There are people who go to the doctor complaining about the ringing in their ears, and the doctor says, you have tinnitus. In some cases it's true. Some people can suffer from severe ringing in the ears, and then it's a clinical issue. But very often, people don't realize that they are so healthy, full of energy, that nada is simply very present and quite loud. And if you start focusing on it with a negative mindset, it becomes annoying and you go to the doctor. Doctor, please help me. It drives me crazy. But nada, that ringing in your ears, is a vibration of your energy circulation. And the healthier you are, the more present it is. And when you understand that it's a good thing and not a bad thing, it's not annoying, it's rewarding. You will say, oh, there it is again. It's a ringing in your ears. Whenever you feel distracted, concentrate on nada, it immediately centers you. And it is the one tool that we use in our meditation to canalize our attention. The world is full of meditation methods, hundreds if not thousands. There's only one in yoga. It starts with nada, which is described in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, chapter 1. Nada, the inner sound, the mysterious sound. You know, I'm a member of a Facebook group, yoga professionals, what have you. They are based in the UK, and the manager of the group put out a question: what kind of books do you read about yoga and what would you recommend? And there were like 80, 90 reactions, all modern books. Some mentioned Bhagavad Gita, but nobody mentioned Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So I put my comment there and I said, I'm really surprised that nobody mentions the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is the foundation of yoga, laying out the eightfold path. And it mentions sattva and nada that most yoga teachers don't know about, but which are crucial in yoga practice. It's sad that so many people who consider themselves professionals, take themselves serious as yoga practitioners or even teachers, all they can come up with is modern yoga books, which very often are only written to earn money, not to really inform people. Anyway, another important element to understand, I mentioned it without going in detail, is that the brain exists out of two main sections. There is the big part of the brain. Here's the big part of the brain. It's cerebrum. Cerebrum, the big lumps of the brain. The big lumps of the brain is what we activate with our modern education system. It's where you rationalize, it's where you memorize, but it's very limited, in fact. It's limited to how it has been conditioned. The small part of the brain is called cerebellum. The small lumps of the brain. That is the location of intuition. Try to see it like this. Ancient people who had no benefit of any education whatsoever, all their energy was here, in the intuition, in the cerebellum. So they were very sensitive to natural phenomena, very sensitive to vibrations, energy. In Korea still, all the generations that did not benefit from systematic education that came after the Korean War, older generations are still functioning like this. And therefore, those people are very superstitious. Korean people will know this. Their grandparents are very superstitious, but many of them can barely read or write. Their cerebellum is very highly developed. They are very sensitive, but they are not capable of rationalizing it. So, if the cerebellum is very highly developed, you're very sensitive, but superstition, you understand what superstition in essence is? Superstition in essence is fear of the unknown. It's fear of things that you cannot understand, that you cannot rationalize. Modern generations, they have no superstition. They laugh at superstition. Why? Because all their energy is here. But energy is limited. It can only be concentrated in one place at a time. So, ancient people, it's all here, but there is no intellect to speak of. Modern human being, it's all here. Sadly, there is no intuition to speak of. And that is where the disconnect comes from that we talk so much about these days in the media. The disconnect from ourselves and the disconnect from nature, natural phenomena, etc. Our sensitivity, intuition, has been blunted because all our energy is now drawn here. Highly educated people, they are top heavy, all their energy concentrated in the cerebrum. The ideal, of course, and the goal of yoga is to develop both in an equal manner so that there is a balance between the two and they start functioning in harmony with one another, leading to genius. I mentioned it last week, remember? There are many scientists in this world because of the highly developed education system that we have. Most of the scientists do not really contribute to further development, deepening insights and what have you, only marginally, because they are active in the cerebrum and their functioning is limited based on what they learned. They're not capable of looking outside of the box of that conditioning. The capability to look out of the box, that is here. But now we already know if this is not developed, functioning here leads to fear. If this one is only developed, it leads to basically repeating what you have learned, but not being able to build on that, to evolve from that. The two together leads to genius. And we mentioned people, Einstein was a genius. We're still trying to understand some of the things that he brought forward. Galileo, Leonardo da Vinci, those people that stand out because of the revolutionary inventions or insights that they presented mankind, those were people who had these two in relative harmony, leading to genius. It's something that yogis naturally develop too. Ajna Chakra will be discussed in lesson 13, but on page 1, a little bit towards the bottom, you see that when there is relative sattva in a human being, in general, and Ajna Chakra in particular, Ajna Chakra manifests as observation and reflection upon the universal source of wisdom and knowledge. It's a sixth sense. There's a reason why it's called the sixth sense. Not only because you have 5 gross senses, but it's also the 6th chakra from the bottom. Just like the 7th chakra from the bottom is referred to as 7th heaven. We will come back to that also. When a human being is relatively in a rajas condition, control and manipulation of thought becomes possible, leading to creativity. In tamas, and this is what most people are battling with, in tamas, Ajna chakra leads to a contraction that results in thought production without control, a tendency towards negative thought, and resulting in restlessness. One of the biggest complaints, apart from fatigue, indefinable fatigue, one of the biggest complaints is depression, feeling down for no particular reason. Or so we think, but the reason simply is our energy literally is down, is contracting. And last week I explained that in the universe, energy has a natural tendency to condense. Energy becomes gas, becomes liquid, becomes solid matter. We are the product of that. Our physical body is the end product of that manifestation, that contraction. So yoga is a system to reverse that process, go back to the source of all that is below. The spirit, energy, the soul. There are many ways to describe it. The way that I'm presenting it to you is a little bit static. Of course, the reality is very dynamic. There are 7 energy bodies. Energy is constantly fluctuating between all those bodies, faster than light. You don't realize. And no matter how much yoga you practice and concentrate on Ashna chakra, your energy will never be completely 100% only in Ashna chakra or the crown chakra. You're a whole human being, and those other parts are still functioning no matter how holy you have become, no matter how sattvic you have become. So try to keep that in mind. The way I present it, it sounds static, but it's the only way to understand it. But the reality is very dynamic. It's constantly fluctuating, constantly expanding, contracting. What we try to do is to find a balance in that dynamic functioning, that dynamic process. Energy is inherently unstable. Think of the nuclear power plant, which is so complex and so expensive to build. The only reason for that is to stabilize energy so that it becomes constructive, so that it can heat and power 1 million homes. If there is no control structure in place, it either is totally useless or it can even become very destructive. A human being is just like that. It is the people with big amounts of energy that suffer the most. Energy is our biggest, most valuable asset, but the more we have of it, since energy is inherently unstable, people with big amounts of energy are inherently unstable. As an example, you have the tragic, dramatic lives of artists. We will come back to that soon, sooner rather than later. Okay, about AUM. AUM is, I'm a very down-to-earth yoga teacher. I don't even like to call myself a superficial word like that. And I do not like repeating rituals just for the sake of the ritual. AUM, however, is a ritual with a deep meaning. AUM is a vibration that harmonizes. And I've experienced that for the first time before I was introduced to AUM, before I understood AUM from the teaching from Ajna, before I had formal yoga education. I was practicing Hapkido, and I was very passionate about it, so very fanatic as a young guy. And our Korean teacher, at some point, we were totally drenched with sweat, he told us to sit down. And he started singing Om, and he told us to sing Om with him. We sang Om, I don't know how many times or for how long, but after we were done, the exhaustion was gone. At that time I didn't understand, but it was amazing. Now I understand why, because Om is harmonizing. It opens up both the channels that allow Shiva and Shakti energy to come in. And when you exercise very hard, you're full of Shakti energy. You're in a rajas, in a very, very deep rajas condition. And singing Om, you open up the channel where Shiva energy comes in, which is responsible for recovery. That is one aspect of Om. It really works. It's a vibration. It really works. I know from experience. The other thing is, it's a ritual that I value because of the meaning behind it. We sing Om when we start class, just once. When we finish the meditation at the end of the class, we sing 3 times. There's no coincidence there. There is a reason for that. Teaching yoga is something that is done heart to heart, not head to head, heart to heart. Maybe you already noticed, consciously or subconsciously, that I am very open and honest about everything, even about my own life and my past and everything. So I make myself very, very vulnerable. I open up my heart, but you expose yourself to that. And you open up your heart to receive those teachings. That is yoga in its purest form. Yoga teaching initiation in its purest form. We sing Om once to open ourselves up, to receive. But before we go out into the evil world, a little bit exaggerating, but the world around us can be quite harsh and hard. We protect ourselves by singing Om 3 times. Why 3 times? When you sing Om once at the beginning, you open up entirely. But you have 3 main bodies. Your physical body, your mental body, your spiritual body. So when you're done, you close those 3 bodies, one at a time, by singing Om 3 times consecutively. You close spiritual body, then you close the mental body, and then you close the physical body. So it's a ritual, nonetheless, but it's a ritual that I find useful, and the idea behind it, I think, is valid, is valuable, is valid. Good. That was not so long. I think we can continue without a break. Let me restart the video.